What if you find yourself in the unfortunate scenario where you've lost your spouse to death? If that's the case, what do you do? What are the things you got to think through? Well, if that's something that is of a concern, in this episode, we're going to walk you through a multiple different things that you need to think through. And at the very end, we offer you a checklist to help you think it all through right with your very specific situation.
We hope you've been enjoying all the episodes from the Secure Your Retirement podcast. If you'd like to keep learning and receiving these episodes, then hit the subscribe button and turn on notifications by hitting the bell so you receive alerts when each episode comes out. We've helped thousands of listeners get on the path to securing their retirement. Now it's your turn. Let's dive in.
Welcome, everyone, to Secure Your Retirement podcast. We're certainly happy to have you here with us today. We are going to be talking about a topic that, on the surface, obviously sounds kind of like one of those sad times of life, but in the reality, it's one of those things that we do have to think about, we have to deal with. But the topic is, what do we do whenever we lose a spouse in death? And that is something that we don't love spending a lot of time thinking about ahead of time, but it is unfortunately one of those things that we in our practice deal with every single year, sometimes a number of times. And so we wanted to talk through kind of some of those things that we run into and things that you might want to think about, because if we think about these things ahead of time and we think about them and we maybe have some documentation and some things in place, it can take what would have been an extremely stressful scenario. It's already stressful, but we add on layers of stress if we don't have things in mind ahead of time. And I know, Merce, you have had to deal with this here even recently. And I just thought maybe it would be nice for us to kind of, first of all, let's talk about some of the realities that we see, because this is just how we operate. I mean, I know in my marriage, there are things I do, there's things she does, there's things she runs, there are things I run. And quite honestly, if I had to go in there and tell you exactly where everything's at and what things she takes care of right now, I couldn't do it because we haven't really talked it through. Now, what we do try to talk about a lot is our financial situation, where documents are and those kind of things. But what are some of those real life scenarios that you run into when you're talking to somebody dealing with these kind of things?
Yeah, and I would say in my marriage as well, it's a similar scenario where we kind of just become specialists to make the marriage, be as efficient as possible. And we see that quite often in what we do for financial planning, where you've got one spouse that is really the financial guru of the household, kind of manages the investment side or the saving or the budgeting. And you may have the other spouse is involved in the finances, but maybe even a different section of the finances, like making sure the bills are paid, balancing the checkbook and things like that. But they're not really talking to each other all the time. Or you've got the extreme version, which I don't think we see as often as we did maybe 10 years ago, where there's one that's completely disconnected from the financial side and one that's kind of running everything. That still happens, but it's not as often. And so, but there's that element of if that one spouse, that key spouse that has that key role in the financial side of things, is the first to pass away, well, then there is a lot of stress that is going to come on the surviving spouse that may not know everything about the finances and where to go and who to talk to, and and then that's where it all starts to kind of unwind as to how much they don't know and where all the things are at. Like one easy example is that we've come across a lot is just kind of understanding how to log into all the different accounts that have all the answers, right? The bank accounts and the investment accounts, the Schwabs, the Fidelities. Once you're able to get into those places, that you can start getting a lot of the access, and which then creates a lot of the answers that you're looking for. But just getting the access is the hardest part. Whether it's kind of saved and locked down in a computer that the deceased spouse was managing, and you don't even have the password to that computer itself. So it leads to a lot of overwhelmed feelings of, I just can't do it. And what we end up seeing a lot of times is this paralysis that does happen if we're not properly prepared. Another big one is all around income sources and where is actually the money coming from. right? If you're working and paychecks are coming in, well, and they just stop, you know where they're stopping from. But if you're fully retired and you've got money coming in from different investment sources at different periods of time, and you've got these required minimum distributions that come in, you've got annuity payments, you've got, dividends that you may be living off of, whatever it is, it's a little bit different than just a standard paycheck every other week. So kind of sifting through all of that becomes a big thing too. And that's I feel like just the tip of the surface. But what else do you see there, Raiden?
Yeah, I think, sometimes as we just start thinking through, I guess from that before, and then like things that we want to think about ahead of time, because these are some things that are going to get affected when this occurs. And if we had these things ahead, we're not going to have any surprises. So let's just talk through a few of these things that are going to have to be updated. So if I'm already at Social Security age, well, there's going to be an adjustment. Many times, though, in our scenario, what we're doing is we're talking to people ahead of time, and we can show them through our financial planning software that we can say, hey, this is what it's going to look like if one spouse passes away, and we talk it through. And what we know is that the surviving spouse is going to get to keep the largest source of Social Security between the two, but the other one's going to drop off. So I'm going to go from 2 Social Securities to 1. I get to keep the largest of the two, but that's something I need to think about. And if I didn't know that, or I wasn't planning for that, that could be very, very stressful. The other thing that's going to change is I have, if I've been always used to from a number of years filing my tax return as a married filing jointly, I have a little bit of a reprieve time in there that I don't have to immediately go, but I am going to get to a point where I'm going to be now filing as single. And that's going to change my tax bracket a little bit. If my income's anywhere close, you're going to see my taxes go up. So there are some things there that we need to think about. I think one of the biggest things that we talk about a lot, and then people just, it feels cumbersome, but I know we've helped people through it quite a bit, is if let's say I've got 2 IRAs myself, my spouse has 2 IRAs. Well, we got to get that IRA that's in my name. If I'm the one who's deceased, they got to get mine out of my name and get them into my wife's name. And that sometimes feels a little bit overwhelming. I think on that particular topic too, there are some choices that people may not know about. You don't have to put it in your name. You could keep it as an inherited IRA. Mm-hmm. There are reasons why to do that. We're not going to go down that whole path today. But I think another one, we actually just did an episode on this, is beneficiary mistakes. What are some things that we want to think about there, especially when it comes to beneficiaries to a spouse, and making sure that I think through the idea of a spouse as well as children and grandchildren and those kind of things, just so that I have the most options.
Yeah. Yeah, we did an episode here recently around different ways to set up your beneficiaries and things you want to be thinking about, but sometimes that gets overlooked too. And the last thing you want is that big surprise that, the husband or wife forgot. Maybe you guys talked about it, but maybe there was lack of follow through on actually filling out the beneficiary forms, and the money's going somewhere that it shouldn't be going, or that was not what the goal was. We've seen this before. Accounts oftentimes get kind of spread out at various custodians, or maybe an old 401k, and you think you've updated everything, and you haven't, and you end up leaving money to maybe not your spouse. Maybe in some of the crazier scenarios we've seen to we've heard and seen about, to an ex spouse because we never updated the beneficiary, even though the will says something completely different. So the beneficiary designations are incredibly, incredibly important to be reviewing. And if at least those are the way that you want them to be, at least we know the money is going to transfer the way that we want it to go. And that doesn't become a headache on top of all the other things that we've already just mentioned, figuring out. You mentioned tax bracket changes. A lot of you, when you listen, you hear us bring on Taylor Wolverton on our team. She's the director of financial planning and tax strategy, and she actually calls it the widow's what's she call it, the widow's penalty, where when if you pass away, going from the joint to the single bracketing it ends up feeling like a penalty because the brackets are compressed, the deductions get less and things like that. But on top of that, the other one is Medicare. We have Sean in our office who helps people, especially in this scenario, navigate Medicare changes. But maybe, it's definitely a time to reevaluate which plans are going to make sense for you going forward, but also Medicare IRMA surcharges, which we've done plenty of conversations on around as well. Those brackets change just like the income tax brackets. And so it can be, if we're not planning properly for some of these big changes that could be coming our way, it could be a little bit devastating or just overwhelming. And, all of this kind of gets tied back together, I think, with the estate documents that we talk about all the time. And we could probably go through several examples there of a will saying one thing and the beneficiaries doing something else, or someone thinking that the will was going to create a trust and it didn't, and it ended up that the assets went directly to probate, and that created a big mess that the surviving spouse or the surviving partner wasn't aware of, or the surviving kids were not aware that it was set up this way. So I think there's a lot of financial problems that we need to think through, and the time to think through them is not after the passing of the spouse. It's to be thinking about it. So what's the best way, Radon, would you say, after, from what we've seen, from what we talk and teach, and how do we prepare so that it doesn't happen this way?
Yeah, I think I'm just going to hit on that very first one first, which is the estate plan. Sometimes I'll talk to people and I'll say, "Hey, how old is your estate plan?" And they go, "Oh, it's like whatever, 15 years old." And I'm not saying a 15-year-old plan would not hold up. My point is that I try to make with a client, though, is why do we want to stress it? And a lot of times I think that people don't want to go get their plan updated because you got to go sit with the attorney. It's going to cost us a couple $1,000. It feels complicated. And one of the things that we really love about our approach and our system, because for our clients, we really help them keep their estate plan documents up to date. We say that we should do at least a scrub of those documents every 5 years. And what we're really trying to say is very likely a refresh. And that could just be everything in there in that document is the same, but we've got a nice fresh date on it. And that just says, hey, this is showing that this is my current belief system. Nobody's going to dispute it. It's not like I said this 15 years ago and you can say life has changed. And the nice thing under our system is our clients don't pay anything to get those things updated. It's kind of built into our approach. Mm-hmm. And so I think that's a really big one. I think I'm going to go back and we'll hit on another one that I think we've been trying to talk a little bit more about with our clients, and that is organizing documents. So you can have an estate plan and you can have all these things in place, but if I expect for my heirs to just take those documents and understand it, that's going to be complicated. And so if I could come up with an approach like we've been talking to our clients about with this, what we call a letter to our heirs, what that really means is that if I have a document that says, hey, this is where the baseline of everything is at. And if it says, hey, go to this institution, go to Charles Schwab, I've got 3 accounts there. That is huge. You don't have to have the account numbers. You don't have to have all the different, but hey, I got 3 accounts there. I got a traditional IRA, I got a Roth IRA, and I got a brokerage account. Now I've got a starting point. And hey, by the way, call this insurance company. I've got a life insurance policy there. It just, now I'm not like scrambling, looking through documents and files, just trying to figure out these. And that kind of goes down this idea of like, let's give our heirs a map.
Right.
And in that map, they're able to kind of see how that would play out. I think another one is really, we're going to say this and I'll let you kind of speak on it, is about simplifying advisors. I don't think what we're saying here is just go have one advisor, but how would you describe simplifying your advisors?
Yeah. I think go back to, I don't know, maybe 5-10 years ago, what we were seeing is someone would come in and say, well, I've got an advisor that does this. I've got an advisor that does this. I've got an advisor that does this for me. And I like kind of diversifying amongst advisors. Well, I think what we're seeing more and more is more of that consolidation of advisors, not because of the investments or poor performance, but they're starting to realize that they are way too spread out. And you can still get plenty of diversification amongst a couple or even just one advisor. In strategy, you can get plenty of diversification. And if you really trust those advisors, then you know that they're part of their role is to help with this transition process. So we coach a lot of our clients that, when it comes time, when it does happen, we take a very involved role in the this transition process. And we're saying that in front of both spouses, right? And then they know that if something was to happen, hopefully they have that letters to the heirs kind of put together, but they know to come directly to us. And in fact, we would encourage them to put it in the letters to the heirs to call us directly and set up a meeting for this whole transition. So simplifying advisors just means, get it get it in a place where you can just have one or two point of contacts rather than having to figure out, well, I've got the money over here and I have to talk to this person about that. I've got the money over here. I got to talk to this other person and their teams, and it can get overwhelming. And then not to mention the banks and, all the other stuff around there. So simplifying advisors, I think, is going to be huge as far as, again, not for the investment side of things, but more for just simplicity and transition and efficiency with your estate. That becomes rather important. One other thing that we are seeing more and more of, Radon, is both husband and wife, or the spouses, are coming to the meetings more often, right? It used to be that only one would come. The main person, the financial leader in the family, would come to the meetings, but we're seeing more and more of that. And we're encouraging that they start involving their kids too to some of these meetings, especially if the kid is the executor. And those meetings go a little bit different sometimes with when you get the kids involved, but it's kind of just being in a place where you can, one, be introduced to us in the event that anything was to happen. And then you start to get some comfort around the strategies and how things are being put together so that there is success while they're living, but also there's success in the transition too.
Yeah, I was just going to speak on that just a real quick. Like, every now and then, though, we still get this scenario where one will come to the meeting and I'll say, hey, is your spouse going to be here? And they say, they don't care about this stuff.
Right.
I don't care. They don't care about this. They told me to make all the decisions. I'm the one that handles the money. They're the ones who they just said this is not a part of it. And here's what I'm going to say. It's not like both have to be the financial gurus, but they both need to see the roadmap. And one of the things that we talk about is like, look, if a person's not really got the aptitude or the desire to learn all of the different intricacies of everything, they still need to know where everything's at. And so what we will do in those meetings is that we'll say, here's the map, here's the road map, here's where the accounts are. And I will tell you that even a disinterested, financially interested spouse, once they see the map, they go, oh, I see how this all fits together now. And I understand that these accounts are here. I didn't even know we had those accounts. I didn't know how that worked. I didn't understand how that was going to connect and give me income for the rest of my life. I didn't understand that that's what this meant for taxes. At least they've got the roadmap. So now when something happens, they go, hey, I got that roadmap. It shows me where everything's at. I just think that's extremely important. And so sometimes we might get that little, slant eye where they're going, hey, why are you saying you need my spouse here? And they don't want to be here. And we're like, well, because we've said in these meetings before with family, because of this situation where we have a spouse that's passed away and now they don't know where anything is at. And we're walking them through A to Z for the very first time in their life. And that's very, very stressful. So I just think making sure that we have all this together and having it coordinated just makes a lot of sense. One of the things that we do have, by the way, if you are listening to this and maybe you're just kind of planning, we do have a checklist. It's basically this idea around a surviving spouse checklist, and it can kind of have all these different little things you got to think about. So if you're listening to this and you think you'd like to have that, just call the office, go to the website, go to the contact us page. You'll see our contact information. Call the office, let them know that you'd like the surviving spouse checklist, and we'll send that out to you. As always, if you would like to have a conversation with us, you can also do that on the website as well, where you can schedule a phone call. We'd be glad to hop on and talk to you about your individual situation. Anything final here before we go, Merce?
Nope. I think the last thing you want is for the event to happen, and then you've got someone trying to figure it all out and going through files and folders and everything like that. You've worked hard to get to where you are. You've worked hard to build up this retirement, and let's make it easy all the way through and into the transition as well. Everyone's going to benefit from it.
All right, everyone. Have a great week. We'll talk to you again next Monday.
If you would like to find more information about Peace of Mind Wealth Management, we invite you to visit our website at pomwealth.net. If you go to the contact page and contact us, we'll send you a free copy of our book, The Peace of Mind Pathway. It lays out our process from beginning to end. Please visit our website.
For more retirement tips, check out these videos. Also, if you find them valuable, please subscribe to our YouTube channel and give us a like.